Raise your hands. The lady here to Georgina, this one here.
Okay, this one here is Mindy Reiser from Global Peace Services. Thank you, gentlemen. It was extraordinarily enlightening. I wanted to ask the two men from Liberia, particularly, in terms of the salience of economic survival for so many young people, what projects seem to be working? Often people have found that some sort of cooperative where people understand what's going on, they have a role in running something, there's reciprocal accountability, can sometimes be a way of engaging people. And there's a whole history of cooperatives, but again, I don't know enough about traditional ways of living in Liberia to see if that would work. But I'm wondering what the young people, beside going to the city and trying to make it in some way, see as possibilities for them. And in terms of the rural area, what kind of things are working? A lot of NGOs work on crafts, but surely there's a limit to how many crafts the developed world can buy. So I really would like to hear some viable economic proposals that you see as positive in Liberia.
Who wants to start with that one? Eddie?
Oh, thank you. I think one of the problem we have in Liberia is the issue of sustainability. You have more program going, more NGO, and after working for 1 or 2 years, they just leave. There's no way to sustain the project. So I think one of the best things to do is to engage the community, give the project to the community, and the community run the program. And that way you have a lot of people getting involved and will be able to sustain it.
I'll just want to add a couple of things to that. And I hate to use this word, but I'm going to have to. The cookie cutter approach, which is a word I hate, by the way, would not work. I mentioned to you there are a considerable number of young people in urban areas, but there also are young people outside of urban areas in towns and villages. If you go back to demographics on Liberia, the major occupation is agriculture. So you can train tailors from now until 2035. If the major occupation is agriculture, you're wasting your time. And it's subsistence farming. So it might not necessarily be wanting to make farm to get rich from it, but wanting to make farm to be able to feed your wife and the rest of your family members that are deciding to stay with you. I think the best alternatives as far as what moves and what pushes things economically would be those things that are generated around agriculture, especially for the rural areas, which are the predominant areas. And then you can look at what other cooperatives that might not necessarily be agricultural cooperatives, but that can be cooperatives around small businesses that might work in urban areas. I know Mark and I were in Liberia around the same time in 2005, and I was looking at some projects that IRC was doing, and one of the things that they were excited about was a tie-dyeing cooperative in Monrovia that was generated and run by young people that had taken over the tie-dye market. So they were the ones who were the predominant people in tie-dye in the urban areas. So agricultural cooperatives for non-urban areas, because that's what Liberians do, and then look for more income generation, business-like cooperatives for the urban areas.
Do you have anything to add, Mark, or shall we move on? Next question. This gentleman back here.
I don't have a question, but I'd like to make a contribution to the responses they just made. Because I have had the opportunity to look at the situation in Ghana, which is around the corner from Liberia. Ghana has not been in a serious conflict situation since 1966, so it has a different background. But then, when it comes to the question the lady asked about what to do in order to engage them economically, I don't know about the situation in Liberia, but in Ghana, even though the economy is agriculture-based, most of the youth in Ghana do not participate in agriculture at this time. What they would want and what they ask for is education and training. training in anything that would get them out of the village. Because research has also found that in Ghana, the youth do not go to the cities looking for jobs. They go there looking for good living conditions, better living conditions. They would like to see movies. They would like to go to the theater. They don't have those things in the village. So maybe we need to provide for them in the village too.
Thank you. I know this gentleman over here had a question, and then I'll take the two right together, the gentleman and the lady.
Dave Peterson.
Wait till you get the microphone.
Dave Peterson, National Endowment for Democracy. It was my pleasure to observe the Liberian elections with Eddie. You know, talking about the massive participation, or the very strong participation of youth in the Liberian elections, I wonder, Eddie, or maybe the other panelists could answer this question as well, to what extent the candidacy of George Weah was a mobilizing factor as a relatively young football star. Was that something that really got young people excited and interested in the elections? Having also recently observed the Nigerian elections, I was struck, I remember a conversation I had with some people, that a lot of the young people that seemed to be mobilizing behind different candidates, they were sort of acting like it was a football game. And I wonder if maybe one of the keys to getting people involved in politics, young people especially, is to make it a little bit fun. I mean, I know Eddie was talking a little while ago about some sort of sports thing that he's doing now with NAMO. I mean, the enthusiasm that the young people have in the program, it strikes me that a lot of it has to do with, I mean, when I was a kid in high school or college and was getting involved in politics, the main reason I was doing it was because it was fun. You know, not necessarily, I mean, sure you had some political sort of ideals and things like that, but I mean, isn't that what it's all about, maybe?
Eddie, just wait. Let's take two questions at once. The lady right behind, right next to him.
I have many questions, but I'll keep it to two. It was so interesting.
Keep it to one.
Yes. Okay. We'll keep it to one. Both of you kind of mentioned, you know, you're a child and you always stay a child in Liberia. What does it mean to become an adult? When are you considered an adult and you're actually allowed to participate in conversations? And what is the official definition in Liberia according to your youth policy? What is youth, the age definition? Thank you.
I will start with Dave. The open factor, or like what Rana talked about, we have the American Liberian and the indigenous Liberian. A lot of young people thought that Open was an indigenous, and he could be able to represent the young people and the Liberian people. Open did not really spend money during the election. The young people printed their own T-shirt. They slept at the party quarter. They mobilized for WEA. So we're like indigenous versus the American Liberian. That's one of the factors that get a lot of young people. And the second round of election, it was like choosing between Eddie Johnson Sirleaf, it's a lady, against George Weah as a youth. Now, a lot of people talk that you have two distinct personalities going in the race. You have one very seasoned politician, had a lot of contact. Then you have one person who is just a football star. So the campaign at the time changed a lot of young people who are educated to feed a post-conflict environment needed somebody who is very schooled, who understands the system, who can transform the particular situation at the time. So people had to shift to go to Eddie Johnson Sirleaf.
Randall, I think the second question was probably your cup of tea.
I've kind of mixed the questions up, so let me.
It's the one about what's the definition of youth in the national youth policy.
I actually had a conversation today with Valeria, sitting right there from UNDP, about that. And that's one of the shortfalls I see of the Liberia National Youth Policy. The policy defines youth as between 18 and 35. The crucial thing about that, well, let me say a couple of things quickly. again, we go back to rural and urban. Rural, you an adult when you can make a farm and you have rice stacked in your cellar, and you have a wife and you have probably 28 children. No, but you get the idea. Adult is when you're able to do all of that. And in the rural areas, the young people can do that at a fairly early age, earlier than 35, because they start making farms for girls that they want to marry when they're teenagers. So that in itself, if we put that face value against urban youth, you're not considered an adult until you have a job that's bringing something in and you move out of your parents' house, which in urban areas, you can stay with your parents till you're 30-something in Liberia, and that's still acceptable. One of the main things about how youth, in my opinion, are defining Liberia now is that gap. Without the 16 years of war, youth would have been able to go to school regularly and graduate from school and look for opportunities. But you've had 16 years of war going off and on and people running out of schools back and forth. So until they can catch up with all of that, I think that's why we have the definition of youth at 35. If you had asked that question 1989, I can almost guarantee you that it would not have been 35. But again, that definition is what the policy states, but it's a shortcoming because I can almost guarantee you also that that's not what traditionally rural youth would see as a youth.
More questions? Lady over here.
Hi, is this on? It's okay? Okay. My name's Amanda Brondi. I work at DAI, and I'm wondering that at least some of these youth were former combatants in Liberia. So when it comes to mobilizing them, do you find it particularly difficult to encourage the participation of ex-combatants? And additionally, do you find that there's resistance among like the educated elite who actually are participating?
Who wants that question?
It's both difficult and sometimes very easy. Like we experienced during the war, during the election, I visited a place called Nema County, where Chapter started the war, and how they was sharp to train 70 kids. And I realized a guy who was very sharp, but I know he was as general, and I recruited him. And he did extremely well in Nema County, and the county came second on the voter register list. So sometimes you can mobilize and you can have very good results from all of them. Some of them are very hard to deal with.
I think one more question. Who wants it? There's two ladies here. I'll take both your questions if they're short.
I'll be very brief. I'm Michelle Gavin with the Council on Foreign Relations, and I really appreciated the presentations and the discussion of Liberia's national youth policy and this very impressive process of bringing youth into the policy formulation picture. It all makes great sense, but I am sort of left wondering, to what extent is a national youth policy a bit marginalizing? Yeah, because given the demographics of Liberia, I mean, youth policy is national policy, right? And sort of setting it off to the side as kind of a set of policy goals and needs for this special population. Is there some risk there that youth issues get marginalized as some kind of special category as opposed to mainstream national goals?
And I think my question follows well on the heels of that. I'm a doctoral fellow at the Howard University School of Social Work, and for the last year, my father has been my best reader, and he's a former civil rights activist here. And what he continually says as I write about displaced African youth is, boy, you sure spend a lot of time not talking about power, not talking about empowerment. And so the conversation has been, but Dad, that'll scare people. When you talk about youth empowerment in Africa, we immediately go to youth bulge. We talk about fearing young men. We talk about the atrocities, or the riots. So it's couched in these terms. So at what point, what needs to happen so that we can talk about the empowerment of African youth without this context of fear?
I didn't hear a question mark after that last one, but Mark, we haven't given you a chance to answer any of these. So.
The first question about the National Youth Policy. There is a big danger with doing that. I think you point something out, Michelle, it's very important, and that is that sometimes a National Youth Policy can be kind of a throwaway, where I remember in Rwanda there was a lot of talk about a National Youth Policy, and right after it was declared and so forth, it sank like a stone. There wasn't money put behind it, there wasn't donor support. The Ministry of Youth was supposed to help lead it. At that time, they had 1.5% of the national budget. You know, mainly what national youth ministries do is soccer competitions for the boys and cultural dances for the girls. And so that's a danger. And in my view, a national youth policy has to be seen as a first step to get people thinking about it. And it's not a bad first step as long as there are steps to really include youth much more directly and explicitly based on and again, on their terms after that. And I think what needs to happen is for governments to really design policies that are youth-centered and centered around youth of the majority, not those defined by the ones that are the least threatening or most comfortable to talk to, which again are usually people that are just as educated as the people already in government. With regards to the empowerment issue, I think that what needs to happen to include them and in a way that's not threatening is I think the starting point is to actually learn about how peaceful most of these marginalized youth are already. And just to give you an example, how did the war end in Liberia? Well, as I understand it, there was a bridge. The Lurd were fighting on one side of the bridge. Charles Taylor's National Army was fighting on the other. These are young men shooting at each other. And at some point they just said, what the hell are we doing? And they threw down their guns. They walked to the middle of the bridge. They embraced, and the war ended. Now, we just heard about when is Charles Taylor leaving the country. No. These were young men who were drugged up and exploited to no end to fight each other, and they're the ones who said this is crazy, and they stopped the war. So it's these kinds of things. What's a protection strategy? I was talking to Pia and a couple of other people at break. What's a protection strategy for a young man in Freetown? Well, sell marijuana to the police, because if you do, then they won't hassle you. So in trying to understand youth on their terms, what are two, there's a Palestinian rapper that was interviewed, and the question was, why did you become a rapper? This is in the Gaza Strip. And he said, because I can use rap music to express my rage without violence. Now, when you start to understand how people are drawing on mechanisms that you wouldn't even think of, right, to remain peaceful, then I think you have a starting point for working with empowerment, again, on their terms. If it's not on their terms, it's not going to work. And I think what we have to realize is that our starting point is uh-oh, there's a lot of young men in the city. Boy, that's dangerous. Could be a war. Well, let's think about this. Can anybody name a war in Africa that started in an urban area? Yeah, they're all rural-based. Of course, there were urban youth and urban elites involved in the wars, but they all have rural bases. Now, part of what's going on with the youth bulge information, which the demographics are extremely important. The more youth there are, the more we should be investing there, in my view. But with reference to this, most wars are rural-based, not urban-based. And I'd like to point out that almost all of them in Africa are over now. So we have a lot of distortion in our understanding of marginalized youth, particularly young men. And until we realize that and start to understand what their life is about, it's going to be very difficult to work with them because we don't even know where to start.
Well, I think that's a very good note on which to end. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to say thank you for coming and thank you for your attention and for your good questions. And now, before you go, I've been asked to introduce Dave Larsen, who will actually say something to close the event.
Don't worry, it will not be long at all.
No,
I've been to. I I've been sitting in the back for the entire event, and along with Georgina, put this together, and I don't think I could have asked for anything as positive as what's happened today. I think the conversations were excellent, and I do think that what had started a year ago when Georgina and I met actually in this room at the Wilson Center Conference on Youth and Conflict, and our discussions about the political aspect of youth engagement and how young people are engaged in politics, and how it is a part of the process of any developing democracy in any country, in any part of the world, and also part of conflict and post-conflict societies, but no one was talking about it. And there was on the margins some discussions, but there wasn't an overarching dialogue going on, and we decided that we wanted to bring it to the forefront. And there were some skeptics that didn't think that there would be much interest, but I think by today's attendance and the questions that came out today and the discussions, I think, and some recent articles that are now appearing to talk about political activity and politics and young people, I think is a very positive sign, and we hope that this will start and create what has already been happening with Mark and with Michelle and with others, a discussion and more research sharing and more research and discussion and tools and development of tools and resource development. You'll see on the table outside there was stamped draft. Those are actually case studies that NDI has been developing on the programs that the three wonderful panelists are from Bosnia and Herzegovina, Kenya, and Liberia from. We're also in the process of developing a toolkit for practitioners and policy developers. All this is through funding from the NED, so thank you for that. And we hope to engage, and as many others, please contact us with any thoughts, follow-up, and conversation. And thanks to all the wonderful panelists and moderators. As far as the panelists go, there's only one panelist that's actually from D.C., Randolph, who's now living in Washington.
Live in D.C.
Live in Washington. That's what I meant by from, live in Washington. But all the others have traveled from far, so we thank them, and the moderators, we thank you for your time. And also to Sarah, who was very integral in organizing this, and Eliza, who Gopi and who as well. So thank you all, and please keep talking.
Well, thank you. Good of you to come. I enjoyed it. I wish you good luck, by the way.
Very much.
Oh, hi. You're welcome.
I think there is times when you guys after 2 p.m. and Eliza, I'm going to at least give her your contact information. But we look at his schedule and
Well, I only walked down 2 floors. Now I'm going to walk back up. Yeah.
yeah, so it looks like that's already some time tomorrow. Were you in the
Excellent.
Oh, yeah.
Michael, yes, I worked with him. Michael.
When were you I joined EC 4 years ago. So yeah.
You get my newsletter thing now?
Yeah, I got it. I got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.